So, here we are in the pub again. Welcome back. Been a while. So, I thought to myself, I've been writing some stuff recently. Yeah, me. Yeah, writing stuff. And I've been writing it and keeping it to myself. And I thought to myself recently, what sort of guy at 53 years of age should give a shit what people think about what he wrote? And actually, I think it's pretty good. It needs a bit of work. It's definitely rough as a badger's arse. Needs a bit of work, but I think it's no bad. So I thought, why not share the rough draft? Not even a draft, I don't know what you call it. Rough thoughts, basically. Why not share it with everybody? See if anybody likes it. And then maybe work on it a bit more, and who knows where it'll go. And, well, it would probably make more sense if I told you what the whole concept of it was about, because I've got like 2 or 3 rough chapters done, and it'd probably make more sense. And I'll do a video explaining that, but for just now, just enjoy it. Wee bit of, any of you of a certain age might remember this, Jackanory. So if you're sitting comfortably, let me have a sip of my tea and then we'll get cracking, will we? And like I say, it's rough, so it doesn't have a title, so we'll just get cracking right into it in just 1 minute. Aye, all right then. Okay. The Full Moon Cafe stood just on the opposite side of the street from the weird triangle intersection that signified the start of the pedestrianised zone. It probably occupied that spot for what, 20, maybe 30 years. But to us regulars, it just felt like it had always been there, maybe even before the city grew into what it is now. Other than a couple of dodgy pubs, petrol station and McDonald's, the Full Moon was the only 24-hour sustenance station left in town. And all the time I went there, never saw it that busy at night. But it was never closed. The owners said it made enough money during the day with the tourist crowd and from the hungry weekend shoppers to cover the lost money at nights. And besides, they told me, we'd rather lose a little money than deprive the people of a refuge from the night. They had no problems with homeless people spending a couple of hours out of the cold and the rain, nursing a cup of coffee, piping hot mug of tea. In fact, most of us with a couple of extra quid would drop some money in the jar right next to the tip jar, which we knew went to providing a warm drink and something to eat to those less fortunate than us. Maybe it was the general vibe that the place gave, or its reputation in the city. But to the homeless people that tended to come in, the cafe, well, they weren't your typical JK homeless bums. Nah, they were just ordinary folk. A wee bit down in their luck, maybe. Their partner had died, lost everything they had, lost their job. Maybe they just didn't want to be part of the system anymore. Some of them were what society would like to call mentally ill, which often just meant they were maybe a wee bit depressed. Maybe they had ADD, bipolar, autistic, what have you. Bottom line, and their brain was wired a wee bit differently, and the government just didn't want to be arsed helping those that they saw as weak anymore. We might not be much, but at least we gave them something, a little safety and solace in an otherwise uncaring world. To the normal city dweller, the cafe wasn't much to look at. The outside was painted black with old-fashioned gold lettering, next to a faded-out painted crescent moon. The paint round the windows was peeling, and the old iron security gates looked like they could be blown off their rusty hinges. The inside wasn't much to the casual visitor either, but to the regulars, it had everything we needed and just the right amount of comfort and charm. The tables we sat at were solid oak, possibly 18th century. They were rumoured to be salvaged by the owners from an old abbey that had been in disuse for about a century, but no one really knows for sure. The tops of the tables were scratched to buggery, large gouges in them, cracks where the wood showed its true age, and some random carved initials of some of the older patrons of the place perhaps, maybe even some of the old monks. Side note, I don't think monks would really do vandalism. Anyway, sorry. Current trends, such tables would be described as distressed farmhouse tables with lots of rustic charm and live edges. But to the owners and us, they were just the tables we supped at, the tables we dreamt at, some of us created at, wrote to strangers of the world from, formed new relationship, and ended old ones at. Yeah, those old beat up old tables had seen and heard a lot. A couple of hipster tourists a few years ago had offered the owners of the place some crazy sums of money to even buy one table. But like us, the owners were attached to the shabby beat up old things. The one thing I never quite got about the interior of the Full Moon was the old gold leaf bathtub. Sitting in the middle of the place. It was completely random. It wasn't quite ornate enough to be viewed as art, and it wasn't quite beat up enough to be scrap. It just was. Most of the time, it sat there empty. The dim lights glimmering off the flaking panels, showing patches of rusted iron below. A few times a year, however, usually around the times of the old pagan harvests and religious festivals, the tub would have various things in it: bread, food, sometimes wine, clothes, knives, small hand tools, and other odds and ends that could be used by daily survival by the less fortunate. No one knew, and the owners wouldn't talk about it, if it actually was a pagan tradition. Over time, we just grew to accept the times of the full tub, even anticipating it, watching it slowly fill over the course of a week. We were never asked to add to the offerings, but we were never told not to either. Man, you should have seen that old tub at Christmas. Traditionally time for new beginnings, and the reminder that winter was almost past. The old tub would be spilling over with gifts. The week prior, the tub, as always, would slowly fill, and often the floor around it, and only after the actual day had passed were its contents removed. Well, when I say removed, it was actually a wee bit more magical than that. To celebrate the old holidays, the Full Moon Cafe closed for one night. The old shutters were pulled. Not even we regulars knew what occurred that one night. The closest we came to an explanation was when we saw a small band of our homeless friends being ushered up a side alley to the cafe one year and hustled in the back door to the establishment. We never pried, it wasn't our place. We were just happy to know that we helped out the ever secretive owners. Sorry, I'll get back and do that bit again. We were happy to know that just as we helped out, the ever secretive owners of the Full Moon Cafe were good people looking out for their fellow humans when they could. Sure, we could have probably got more of the story out of Sarah, the night manager of the old place, but truth be told, we didn't want to ruin the magic, the ritual, the apparent miracle of that one night. It was part of what made the cafe what it was, and its clientele who they were too. The last time I sat at those heavy oak-stained tables was a couple of years ago, right before the collapse. I'd just returned from a little Himalayan trip, against my will, but the will of the head monk who I loved and respected more than my own dad. There weren't as many of us as usual, and there was an overall gloomy cast in the whole place. "Something big's up," old Mick said, nursing his mug of tea and savouring the thick piece of bread I'd just got him. Dunked the bread in his tea and almost drank the soggy piece of bread. "Like what?" Sarah asked as she idly wandered round straightening the place up. "I don't know," Mick replied, staring at the old bathtub now. "All I know is, I reckon we've seen the last fill of this old girl." Tear glistened the corner of his eye, and his old weather-beaten face looked sadder and more thoughtful than usual. We wanted to tell him he should lay off that cheap booze some of the tramps passed around, but we knew he'd been sober for over a year now. And besides, we could feel it too. Change. Not necessarily bad times ahead, just certainly different times ahead. We had no idea how challenging things were about to become in our little country, but we could all sense it. "If I were you, Alan," Mick went on between mouthfuls of soggy bread, "I'd get that bike of yours tuned up to the fullest. Pack what you can and head south. South, eh? Like England? Yeah. From what a little I've heard, things are going to be easier for them in the south, and yet harder in ways. And many people are going to need good men like you, Alan, my boy. Ah, fuck that, I laughed. Soft bastards never helped us the last few years. Now you're telling me to go help them? Bollocks to that. But deep down, I knew he was right. Just like I knew the old monk was right in sending me home. Somehow I knew that south of the border was where I would end up. Why? I don't know. Call it fate, calling, whatever mystical bullshit you like. But I could feel it. Gentle pull at the time, but a near-on magnetic pull, drawing me southwards. Well, Sarah butted into the conversation, you two are pots of joy this evening. She laughed and wandered off behind the counter with just a very dusty, very rare bottle of bourbon she'd been given years ago by an American tourist who foolishly had a crush on her. I was saving this for something, just didn't know what, she said. Slowly she poured the three of us glasses of the rich brown liquid. Old Mick looked at her. Oh, I know you don't touch the sauce anymore, Mickey boy. And I wouldn't normally, but I think we all know that this might be the last drink the three of us share under this old roof, in this old place. We sat in silence, each of us lost in their own thoughts, as the warm burn of the whiskey ran down our throats. Change was indeed a-coming. Well, here's to us, Sarah said. To survival, Mick yelled, oddly turning upbeat and laughing. To a new society, I toasted. Wasn't sure where that came from at the time, it just seemed like the right thing to say. May our gods protect us on our new journeys, we all murmured, as we had on a few other occasions many years ago. And there you have it. That's the first rough as a badger's arse draft of my writings. Don't know where that would fit in the whole story. Probably not at the beginning, probably not at the end, but I don't know. Got to come up with more ideas first, right? I've got to see if anyone likes it as well. So anyway, hope that wasn't too painful to listen to. And maybe I'll be back with some more story time another time. Until then, ta-ta.